Alright, so first we got our list of suspects. First up is Mrs. Pearl, who is Mr. Jones's mother. She's old and frail and is no way involved in the case. Throw her out. Next up is the neighbor. The neighbor just got out of the hospital and can't move a whole lot. She reports some things like yelling and parties, but besides that, not a lot of useful information. It's definitely not her. The more likely candidates are the butler. The butler is a strong animal rights advocate and loves animals. Unfortunately, Mr. Jones has been doing some pretty bad malpractice with animals, which the butler is not very happy about. So he reports any suspicious activity to animal rights advocates, which is good as the butler is hoping for him to reform, but it is in no way hoping for him to die, except for all of the death threats and voicemails from animal rights advocates, but that was kind of just the... whoops. Next up is the assistant. The assistant has been working for Mr. Jones for 5 years now, and in the most recent year has developed a romantic relationship with him. Now, this isn't the best for business, but to make matters worse, the assistant found out that because of their rocky relationship, that Mr. Jones was actually planning to fire her and had the documents ready to go. Because the assistant found out, she broke up with Mr. Jones just a few days before the murder.
In addition to Mr. Jones's relationship troubles, he's also struggling financially. As a CEO of a company, you're supposed to be looking for new ways to improve your business. Constantly being harassed for animal malpractice isn't exactly good for your image. He's still trying to make money after all. So, he scheduled a meeting on October 27th with him and a few other of his friends. And among his closest is another suspect, a man named Robert Mendez. He and Mr. Jones have been friends since college, and even after founding rival pharmaceutical companies, they get along enough to play golf with one another. That is until recently, when Mr. Jones thought it'd be a good idea to tap into Robert's information and knowledge regarding pharmaceuticals and snag a hefty contract using his work. Now, I don't feel like I need to explain why, but double-crossing your friend for your business isn't exactly the best for your friendship or your PR department. Jones, buddy, what the hell are you doing?
So then they have a golfing tournament, just for fun. They play golf, but it doesn't go well, as Mr. Jones gets a nosebleed. As it turns out, he actually gets things like this every so often, as he has a blood problem. So, he takes something called I'm going to edit this in post-warfarin something warfarin, I think, which would normally be very good. Except for the fact that he also takes vitamin K, which is something you don't need a prescription for. But, if you take the two together, then you have the problem that they do opposite things, and it destroys you from the inside. Fortunately, it doesn't kill you, at least not at first. But it does start to cause things like internal bleeding and bruises, something we see on the victim's corpse, meaning his knees were rather weak. In the end, due to his nosebleed, they call it a short.
Now, as for who did it, we strongly believe that despite everything, you might already know. That's right, viewer. We believe that it is none other than the friend Robert. That's right.
You see, all these people, what do they have if they kill them? You know, they don't get much. What, the butler's gonna go against his own morals of animal cruelty? Given that humans are technically a species of animal? And he loses his job. The assistant also loses her job, although she kind of already did because she broke up with him, so she doesn't really lose much. You don't really need murder. Also, on average, romantic or passionate murders are really messy, so maybe she was an accomplice, but that's less than likely. The most likely suspect is Robert, as you can see. We have some suspicious evidence. Evidence number 1. The car was thrown into a landfill. How do you know about landfills? Well, obviously it's because you have the knowledge of an assistant or a CEO. As you work directly in the pharmaceuticals, you would have to dispose of things fairly frequently. So you would have to be in constant connections with landfill companies, seeing as you would have to dump stuff and be aware of their schedule, when and why they dispose of things.
On top of that, Robert is also extremely skilled with the golf club, which happens to be the most likely candidate for the murder weapon. Either that or it's a cup. A plastic cup. You don't kill people with cups. I looked into it. You can't do it. It doesn't work. I'm sorry.
The final piece of evidence, which is the cat hair in the car of the victim. That's right, Robert has 2 cats, which means that it can only be him. You might assume that the assistant or the butler may have planted evidence, but I have reason to believe that they were not involved. As you see, the morning of the 27th, the day both Mr. Jones and Robert were supposed to go on the plane from California, their home, to Arizona, where the meeting would take place the following day. The butler offered to drive Mr. Jones to the airport, but Mr. Jones says, "No thanks, butler, I will drive myself to the airport. You go home for the day." The assistant also was not there, most likely due to protesting, considering her crummy job conditions.
After Mr. Jones went to his car, Robert was standing next to the car in a blind spot where nobody could see. And he kicked Mr. Jones in the knee where he was weak from all the medicine stuff. And he fell to his knees quickly, giving Robert the opportunity to bash his dang skull in with a freaking golf club, completely destroying his nose and a portion of his skull and half his teeth out and... oh, God!
Mr. Jones's body falls lifeless to the floor. Robert picks up Mr. Jones's car keys and opens the door. The first thing he notices is the white cloth. Whenever Mr. Jones would play golf with Robert, Mr. Jones would often use the white cloth to wipe off the sweat, and due to his nosebleeds, also would use it in order to wipe it off. Robert, finding something that already has Mr. Jones's blood on it, places it on Mr. Jones's dead face. Surprisingly, there's not a lot. This is either due to Robert's extreme golfing knowledge and good technique, or possibly due to his fairly above average medical knowledge, given that he is a CEO of a pharmaceutical company. Robert places Mr. Jones in the trunk of the car and drives off. Robert drives the car for quite a while until nightfall, around 5 or 6 p.m. most likely. Robert drives until he notices a turnout in a pretty secluded area. Dumps the body, but doesn't do it with his bare hands. That's right, the socks, ladies and gentlemen, they're back. He uses the socks, and he drops off the body. And I think my neighbors can hear me. And he drops off the body, and he uses the socks, and he puts it on the ground, and a little bit of dirt gets on the socks. But guess what? His fingerprints don't, and neither does the blood of the victim. Then he throws the socks in the car. It's kind of gross, but it did what he needed to do. And then he drives away with the victim's car all the way to the airport. He goes, I guess I'll just leave this here. And then he goes into the airplane. He goes to Arizona. He checks into his hotel. He sleeps or tries to sleep. Then he attends the meeting and is quoted for being surprised that the victim didn't show up to the meeting. Then he stays in Arizona a little longer than he needs to, flies back to California at nighttime, gets into the car, the victim's car, uses night as a shield and as a barrier protection, something to go over to the nearby landfill. And once he's at the landfill, he dumps the car, he dumps the keys, but he has something incredible. He has something so powerful. It eliminates all evidence and kind of screws over the whole case. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, he got rubbing alcohol. He brought a backpack. He brought a backpack with cleaning stuff. He cleaned, and he cleaned.
He cleans the murder weapon, specifically the golf club. Then he throws the backpack somewhere, or he takes it home. Then he dumps the car, dumps the keys, wipes off the keys, and finally gets rid of fingerprints.
And walks home in the dead of night or takes public transportation. And no one was none the wiser. Except now, we figured it out. You're going to jail. Goodbye. I need a beer. I need a beer. Give me a drink.